All right, thank you very much. It's indeed an honor and a pleasure to be with all of you in this very important event in the amazing Future of Information series of events this week. And I want to particularly thank Ira for his help and support in putting together this presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you this morning. The title of the presentation is The Arab Spring and the Sulia Project, Youth, New Media, and Prospects for Political Change and Intercultural Dialogue. So basically, I'm going to be talking about two different topics, but they are very much related in terms of their importance and the reliance on new media technologies. The Arab Spring or the Arab Awakening, and also the need for intercultural dialogue between young people cross-culturally, as exemplified in the Sulia Connect program. Both of them are very important examples of how we need new media technologies and how they can be put to use. So the first important thing is to talk about what is the Arab Spring, and here we have it in English and Arabic. I'm glad that there aren't too many Arabic speakers because the letters are not connected, so nobody is going to notice that, hopefully, if I don't tell you, but I told you. Anyway, so what is the Arab Spring? It is, of course, the term Arab Spring or Arab Awakening is used to describe the wave of political revolt or political upheaval that has been sweeping the Arab region as a whole. And I'm sure many of you have been closely following the events in many parts of the Arab world that have been unfolding recently. I think that, as we always say, one picture speaks much more than 1,000 words, or a picture is more powerful than 1,000 words. So if you look at this picture from the heart of Tahrir Square in Cairo, you see that millions of people have actually gathered in this very powerful and strong wave of human coexistence and what I call a historical moment of sharing and unity to topple the Mubarak 30-year dictatorial rule in Egypt. The Arab Spring or the Arab Awakening has been characterized by a number of very important features or characteristics. There have been popular movements. Protesters started all with a very peaceful approach. Violence and repression always came from the regimes or the government sides. And there have been a range of different outcomes or results. Let me just focus on the first part, the popular movement, because I think it's very important that they have been mostly or largely across the board grassroots movements that encompassed everybody across different age groups, gender, males and females, liberals, conservatives, Islamists, secular, you name it. You can see everybody at the heart of Tahrir Square or other parts of the Arab world where the Arab Awakening has been taking place. And the peacefulness of the revolutions that have been unfolding is also very important. The fact that demonstrators and protesters have been always using peaceful methods to get their message across, but they have been excessively faced by repression or violence from the ruling regimes. The range of results, of course, as many of you know, are not the same or equally shared in every country. Countries like Egypt and Tunisia have already had partially successful revolutions, and I say that because, getting the president out of office is one thing, but transitioning smoothly and safely to a democratic society is a different challenge all by itself. But other countries are obviously struggling, like Syria and Yemen and Bahrain. So if we say, where is the Arab Spring? If we want to take a look at the geographic location or the geographic positioning of the Arab Spring, we can look at this map here. It started with Tunisia, it moved to Egypt, and then Libya, and then we have the unfolding or ongoing revolts in Syria, Bahrain, and Yemen, which are still very much now underway or still very much in the midst of their own struggle for achieving democracy and liberation from dictatorship. Who is the Arab Spring is an equally important question to ask. We asked about what is the Arab Spring, and we asked where is the Arab Spring, but it's equally important to ask who is the Arab Spring, the people, the faces behind this very important wave of sweeping change. As I said before, variations in age, socioeconomic background, religion, and political affiliation is an important feature. Also described as leaderless, but I would take this with a grain of salt because, in fact, the movement was launched and led by young people, and they started a number of years back. It's not like they all happen spare the moment or on the spot, as some people might think. There have been, for a number of years, attempts in many of these Arab countries to try to shake the autocrats or the dictators in power. It is just that they never attracted enough people to really create some kind of significant impact or enough change. There have always been like hundreds of people going out and easily cracked on or crushed by the ruling regimes. So that's why the role of the social media comes in putting people together. So where does information fit in all of that? Authoritarian regimes have always controlled the media for many years in the Arab world. Many of the media outlets, particularly broadcast media, have been largely controlled and dominated by dictatorial regimes in the Arab world, which did not give much room for civil society to thrive or for opposition activists to really make their voices heard. But protesters found ways to spread information and calls for action using social media. And I have this very interesting picture here, which is this protester holding the sign or the banner, and you can see the word Egypt. Actually, he's using all of these symbols that come from social media. So it's a very, very powerful picture that speaks for itself. And that's because social media played a very important and very active role in terms of being a catalyst for political change and a very important instigator for social action and for networking among the protesters. Some of the young faces who are behind the wave of Arab Spring or Arab Revolution have used the social media in a number of very effective ways in order to get their message across. One of them is the young female activist Asma Mahfouz, the 25-year-old young Egyptian activist who came to be known as the bravest girl or the most courageous girl in Egypt. Why is that so? Because she put on or she uploaded her own vlog on YouTube, and she actually called people for action, for going out to the street and doing something and shaking the Mubarak regime. And I would like to share this short video with you, and then we will continue our discussion.
انزل البيت، ابعت مسجات لاصحابك، اكتب على النت في كل حته، وعي. انت عارف الدايره بتاعتك، عمارتك لوحدها واصحابك وقرايبك، بس قول لهم انزل معايا، نزلهم 5 ولا 10. لو كل واحد فينا نزل 5 و10 ونزل بيهم لميدان التحرير او ميدان اللازوغلي او في اي حته عشوائيه حتى، ويتكلم الناس ويقول لهم بقى كفايه، بدل ما نولع في نفسنا تعالوا نتكلم ونسجل موقف، ده هيفرق وهيفرق كتير قوي. اوعى تقول مفيش امل. طول ما انت بتقول مفيش امل هيبقى مفيش امل. طول ما انت بتنزل وبتسجل موقف هيبقى فيه امل. اوعى تخاف من الحكومه، خاف من ربنا. ربنا بيقول ان الله لا يغير ما بنفس حتى بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بانفسهم. ليه؟ مش علشان ان انت تبقى كويس وقاعد في حالك وماشي جنب الحيط، الحيطه هتقع عليك وهتقع علينا كلنا. انزل وطالب بحقك وبحقي وبحق اهلك وبحقنا كلنا. انا نازله يوم 25 وهقول للفساد لا والنظام لا.
So as you saw in this very strong, vlog, right? She really was inspiring and instigating people, especially young people, to go out and to make a very important stand and position against the 30-year-old dictatorial regime of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. And just a small mention here that she did actually get detained after the revolution because of her criticism of SCAF, the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces in Egypt, and she was, detained for a number of days, and she was facing actually military trial, and then a lot of pressure from political activists and opposition groups was able to free her. Another young female activist in Egypt, Nawara Nigm, who happens to be a relative of mine, by the way, is a prominent blogger and political activist, and she has been using her blog very actively, as well as her Twitter account, in order to inspire young people to engage in activism and to take action against the regime in Egypt. And she's holding here a small, banner that says, this is from WikiLeaks, it says Omar Suleiman, who was the nominated or chosen vice president by Hosni Mubarak before he left office, is Israel's first man after Mubarak. So she was trying to tell people that, you know, don't trust Omar Suleiman, he might not be the right man for you. And, you know, of course, that was before Mubarak actually left office. She was trying to get people not to trust Omar Suleiman. So she's been very outspoken and very vocal in terms of her criticism, and she's been using the social media to do so. Some of the other young faces of the Arab awakening or the Arab revolution have been Wael Ghunaim and Abdurrahman Mansour, these two young men. They created the Facebook page called We Are All Khalid Saeed. And this is the English page of We Are All Khalid Saeed. It has an Arabic page and it has an English page. And this page was created in order to really celebrate the memory of this handsome young man that you see here, Khalid Saeed, a 28-year-old accountant from Alexandria who has been brutally beaten to death by the police officers in Egypt because he dared to upload a video on YouTube that actually revealed some of the corruption of the police officers. So in retaliation or revenge for his deed, he was brutally beaten to death, and he became a martyr and he became an icon, an iconic figure for the revolution. And this page in particular, We Are All Khalid Saeed, played a very crucial role in terms of inspiring people, mobilizing them, networking them, and helping them to stay connected and to rally behind the cause of political change and against violations of human rights in Egypt. You can also see this woman, and by the way, women played a very important and a very crucial role, both online and offline, in the wave of the Arab awakening. And I'm sure you all know about Tawakkul Karman, the first Arab woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011. I see this as a nod to the Arab Spring and a nod to women's role also in the Arab awakening. This woman here is holding this banner that says, "Bring Wael Ghunaim back alive," and another victim of Mubarak's emergency law, who will be next? So it's a very powerful way, again, of making her point and making her voice heard. Here is Wael Ghunaim, the founder, or one of the founders of the We Are All Khalid Saeed page. Again, he is in the heart of Tahrir Square, and he is trying to rally people and to mobilize them. And all of these pictures are found on YouTube. You can find a lot of powerful images and pictures and videos. If you search on YouTube, you'll find a lot of these resources available now through social media and new media. So why is the focus particularly important on youth leadership? Young people are the fastest growing segment of the population where reform is really needed. They are 70% of the population of the Arab world. So if you look at this Arab awakening or Arab Spring, you can very well tell why these young people have been so effective. They form 70% of the population. Not only that, but they are also agents for change with their own open-mindedness, desire for reform, creativity, energy, and determination. And they are very much technologically savvy, very clever, and comfortable with using new media tools. And we have seen examples of how they were able to put their technological savviness and cleverness and skills to use in terms of using blogs, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, in order to advance their cause for political change and reform in many parts of the Arab world. So why new media in particular? New media accelerate the speed and the spread of information to a wide audience. They raise awareness of corruption and repression. They mobilize and coordinate resistance. They provide platforms for brainstorming. And they keep up pressure after the revolutions. And here I would like to make a small comment on the different functions that can be played by different forms of social media. As they actually played themselves out in the Arab awakening or the Arab Spring. Facebook was used mostly for networking purposes. So people would put up a cause and they would ask people to like this particular cause or this particular page, and people will network together using Facebook. Twitter was much more effective in terms of on the ground, on the spot organization. So people would tweet to each other and say, I am now in Tahrir Square, I am being beaten, I'm being attacked, I'm being tear gassed, help me. Right? And there's a publication that came out that's called Tweets from Tahrir, very interesting, and it's a minute-by-minute recording of all the tweets that came out from Tahrir Square at the heart of Cairo in the midst of the revolution. And YouTube was much more effective in terms of audiovisual images, like the vlog that we have seen by Asma Mahfouz that she uploaded on YouTube, while of course blogs are much more effective for brainstorming, exchanging views, exchanging ideas around topics for discussion. However, I would like to shy away from over-exaggerating or overestimating the role of social media. We should not overestimate or underestimate the role of social media because they do have their own limitations as well. They can really be catalysts for political change. They can advance political causes, but they are not magical tools. That they cannot bring political change all by themselves. It is the people, especially young people or the youth, who can bring about actual change on the ground. So we have to stay away from these, two extremes of overestimating or underestimating the role of social media. We should see them as catalysts, as accelerators for political change that can aid or supplement the process of political transition, but cannot do it all by themselves. So what if these qualities of young people and their comfort with new media could play a leading role in terms of promoting understanding across national borders and across different cultures before conflicts actually arise? In other words, prevention is better than cure. What if we can really tap into these resources, these young people, their vision, their energy, their political desire for change, as well as their savviness with the new technologies? I have to give you here a small example from an experience that I've actually went through and played a leading role in, which is the Sulia Connect program, which is a youth-led intercultural dialogue project that links young people across different cultures and across different contents, across nationally or cross-culturally. And you can see here the Sulia project is actually available. It's www.sulia.net. And it connects young people across the West and the Middle East through internet-based communication, promotes values of tolerance, conflict resolution, and interfaith dialogue, and has been successfully implemented at the University of Qatar, as well as the University of Maryland, as part of my Arab media course here on campus. You can see here some examples of how this program actually works. It connects these young people through windows. They all share the same information session at a set time, once or twice a week. They all get together online and they exchange thoughts and ideas through live internet dialogue. And here's an example of one of the participants in this Sulia Connect project, making a point about how she found this to be a very interesting and useful resource. She's saying, I think it's nice, we don't have all the same opinions, so you really do get a discussion. So the results here, very briefly show how the percentage of students agreed or strongly agreed that they had a good understanding of the views of people in the US or Europe or the Middle East after their participation in this program, and what kind of impact it had on their ideas and attitudes towards the other pre and post, or before and after taking part in this program. So the challenges that lie ahead are very important. We have a number of very important challenges ahead of us. Finding effective means through which affordable technology can be used to bridge not only cultural barriers, but also spoken languages. In other words, can we actually think of some innovative new ways through which we can instantly translate languages? Because now the Sulia program is only provided in English, only in the English language. Can we find some effective ways through which young people can communicate cross-culturally and cross-nationally using instant language translation? That's a question maybe for the panelists to talk about. And we have to think about the stakes have never been higher before, but the opportunities has also never been bigger or greater than today. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think my question would be, how can we actually use the new technologies in order to address the challenge I just talked about now, which is how to use new techniques or new methods to actually enable young people to communicate with each other instantly, using new media technologies across cultures and also across linguistic barriers. Would it be possible to find a way for them to understand each other even if they're not sharing the same language instantly?
Well, as you probably know, Google's got a translation mechanism, and we've done a couple of things recently. So for example, very much like the project you showed, we have in Google Plus now this feature called Hangouts, which is effectively the same thing. You can have a bunch of people simultaneously having a video conference, and that's just part of the Google suite of offerings, and something you can do. We don't yet have live voice instant translation from language to language, but you can sort of see in my role as futurist, that's going to happen in the not too distant future. I can talk to Siri now, I can talk to my, my search box on Google now, and it sort of translates it from my spoken language into whatever internal form it does. So you can see that that's not too far in the future. But I really like this idea that we have now the connection of all these different kinds of technologies. So I can, for example, drop in a page of Arabic text and see it in English. And I can search in English for stuff in Arabic. So this is now just something you can do. And I think, to your point, the more that young people start to use this, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah, Bing has translation as well, and I just used it to speak to a Greek family, and I was amazed at how good it's gotten. So I think it's coming very, very soon, and with things like Skype and Google Hangout and so on, we can bring groups of people together now, and the translation is getting really good.
I think the young people are already finding ways to do this stuff. I'm always shocked at how creative kids are or young people are. When they want to solve a problem, they'll go find a way. And so they can already do the translation, they can cut and paste into various things, they can do all this stuff right now. I think the bigger question is, how do you get more awareness here in the US from kids? And there's just not kind of this driving desire from the younger generations here to really understand all the problems these other kids are going through.
Well, to your point, one of the things I find really interesting about kids and using social media is, you're right, they pick it up very, very easily. And what I find exciting is that they can find new ways to use that media. So for those of us who are older, we invent something like a Twitter or G+ or something like that, and we think of social media communication. And then kids co-opt it and use it in really interesting new ways. And I find that fascinating. So as people build new kinds of technology, look for adaptations of that in ways that you hadn't anticipated. So for example, people setting up their primary Facebook account, you know kids who do this. They set up the one that mom and dad sees, and then they set up the other one that's for their friends. And they keep posting to mom and dad's, you know what I mean. You've seen this happen. But what they're doing is they're basically figuring out how to do a subterfuge. Right? If you're in a politically challenged environment, this is a great skill to know. Absolutely. And Abder's right. 14-year-olds know how to pass this information around.
But if we take the example of the Sulia Connect program in particular that I just gave now, what would be the most, smooth and, non-intrusive way to have some kind of instant translation that would be accurate, so you don't have meaning that's, lost in translation, as we say, and at the same time would aid these young people to communicate cross-culturally and understand each other?
Did you want to say something very quickly? Oh, okay. Well, and thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
can
okay.
I'm
just trying to do as I'm told.
No,
yeah, I thought it was
you're doing the right thing.
It's the same question.
It's effectively the same question. You're asking sort of how's the architecture that's going to happen,
yeah.
and we'll do this in a computer science colloquium. but I think one of the interesting things about the impact of your question is that with open source software and with publicly available APIs, people can very quickly build tools to help work around. So a great example to know about is the Speak to Tweet program that a bunch of Google engineers put together. So when Egypt turned off the internet switch, the workaround for that was cobbled together by a couple of Google engineers to basically allow people to dial a magic phone number, leave a message, which then would get translated into text, and then tweeted on that account. So that was a great workaround, which is a great way to answer your question.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.